Hello, my beautiful friends and loyal listeners. It's always a pleasure to spend my time with you on the airwaves. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you for listening and interacting with me on social media. That truly does make it all worthwhile. Make sure to follow me at Zen Sams. That's Zen with an X, not a Z. Remember that we're now on TV. Tune in at watch.kpmedia.tv and catch a moment of Zen on the Impact Live channel Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. All episodes are now available on demand. Today, we have a great show lined up. In our influencer segment, we are featuring Nikki Giavassis, an American actress, entrepreneur, author of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Pro Cheerleader and Mega Influencer. We're chatting influencer marketing and what businesses and brands need to know to safely get started. I'm also going to have the honor of chatting with Nelson Mandela's grandson. That's right. Kweku Mandela is in the house. He is my dear friend, and he's bringing on Ethan Zohn, his dear friend. Ethan is the winner of CBS's Survivor Africa and founder of Grassroots Soccer, a first-of-its-kind NGO that uses the sport of soccer to teach at-risk youth self-reliance and critical life skills such as HIV and AIDS awareness, and of course, prevention. We're chatting charities, giving back, and how Nelson Mandela's legacy is being kept alive. In My Healthy Minutes, brought to us by Aikido Pharma, we are featuring Dr. Rachel Yehuda, endowed professor of psychiatry and neuroscience at the Icahn School of Medicine. She's a doctor, a scientist, and an author, and we are chatting all things intergenerational trauma, mental health, and how our family past, may be affecting our current state of mind. In our Business and Buzz segment, we have Kyle Wohl, returning contributor, president of wealth management at Revere Securities. And today we are chatting about 2022 market trends, what to pay attention to, and the one hot ETF, Spider Sector's ETF, to look at. We also have Bobby Dudley, who's going to be joining Kyle. He's the Eastern Division Manager as well as the NYC Metro Sales Manager for Sector Spider. They're going to be on in just a few, but up next, we have our influencer segment with Nikki Giavassis. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Tempus, the next generation of the engagement economy, allowing people to make money on their data and earn cryptocurrency for the time they spend on things they already currently love to do. With Tempus, brands will have the ability to pay you directly for interacting with apps, watching videos, playing games, and more. Tempus, the time is now. Engage and earn.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, up in a few minutes, we have our influencer segment, and we're going to be featuring Nikki Giavassis. She's an American actress, entrepreneur, author, and mega influencer. Now, as she gets settled into the broadcast room, let's chat influencer marketing. Now, one of the first marketing questions asked by people is, well, what is influencer marketing? And in simple words, influencer marketing is a digital marketing method used to promote your brand or products by partnering with powerful social media personalities or bloggers. One can leverage the influence that these personalities have over their followers to reach their social media marketing goals. Now, companies can partner with brand influencers to grow their brand awareness, increase engagement, improve lead generation, and even drive sales. Though it can't change customers' perception of the brand, influencer marketing is definitely extremely powerful. The spending is now predicted to pass $3 billion in the US and nearly $14 billion worldwide this year. IZEA, which went public in 2014 and now has a market capitalization of nearly 111 million, partners with big brands like Barilla, Clorox, Guess, and IKEA to find the right influencers and work with them on marketing campaigns. Customer engagements can be 8 to 10 times higher when the content is a creator's sponsored post on behalf of a brand rather than just an ad from the brand itself. Instagram and influencers now go hand in hand. The Meta-owned social media platform has become a primary stage for influencers launching their careers, and they don't need millions of followers to earn money on the gram. Establishing a career as a creator is no longer a pipe dream. Here to break it all down for us is Nikki. She is the author of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Pro Cheerleader. Many recognize her for appearing in movies such as Eagle Eye and Don't Mess with the Zohan. These days, she prides herself on her role as a mom and, a grandma, although she doesn't look a day over 35. Over the years, her followership has fluctuated based on how she's trended in the media, but nevertheless, she's always increased in popularity. She is a mega influencer of sorts and has built an empire using her social media platforms. Today, she's very much an entrepreneur who believes family comes first, as do I. She is Forbes published, as am I, and she is the president of Jordan Management and an agent for public figures and influencers. Her handle is Nikki with a double K, Giavassis Official. Welcome to the show, Stunner.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you.
So, my fellow Greek goddess.
I love that.
Now, one of the major reasons influencer marketing is so effective is because the content produced by influencers like yourselves is perceived to be more authentic than that created by brands. What do you keep in mind when representing these brands?
Well, I definitely look for something that's organic and authentic and something that correlates and aligns with my values or my beliefs. So I don't want to represent or, promote anything that I wouldn't use or that I don't believe in. So I keep it short and simple like that.
Beautiful. And because influencers are viewed as third parties with no vested interest in promoting the brand, this is the reason why 63% of consumers trust what influencers have to say about the brand more than what brands say about themselves. And influencer marketing is expected to become a 22.3 billion industry by 2024, right? So one of the most common questions asked by small businesses, do we need a big budget to do influencer marketing? What do you say to that, Nikki?
I don't think the budget has to be so big because you're really specifying who you want to target. So you could have a very small budget and still have a very great, I'm sorry, it's so early here.
Like an outcome.
Result. Yeah, result.
Of course. And, whether you're doing a 24-hour story or a huge monthly campaign, I'm pretty sure, influencer marketing, there's different budgets to cater to different campaign sizes. So I don't think brands should be afraid of approaching influencer marketing. I think they should be afraid of not being on social media.
Definitely, because that's where the target marketing is. More so than television. People are always on social media, at least an hour a day.
Yeah. In your opinion, can a local business to your local town, right, use influencer marketing to their advantage?
Absolutely. We go to local businesses all the time. My family loves to find local businesses and, promote them, and they really do grow. So social media is the place actually to market local businesses, especially.
So 90% of consumers use the internet statistically to find local businesses. How does that help influencers in terms of paving a career path? How do you go about identifying and targeting these brands that ultimately, you can help get to that next level?
I think you have to specify the brands that you use and that you work with and actually post those brands and then reach out to them, start relationships with them, and just make sure it's always organic, something that you would use, something that you do believe in, and something that you do want to see succeed.
Exactly. And, when you're talking about factors in terms of when a brand should choose, per se, like an influencer like yourself, what advice do you have now on the flip side? What factors should companies and brands be looking at when choosing their influencers?
Well, I think they should have someone that aligns with their goals and their values and what their target is, but also someone who has authentic engagement, high engagement, because they want to get a return on their investment. So they should look at how many likes, how many comments, and the overall engagement of the influencer.
Exactly.
And how active they are.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm so glad you said engagement rate, because this is one of the most important metrics that you need to look at when selecting an influencer. If the social media influencer has a huge number of followers but has an extremely low engagement rate, it might not be very helpful to your brand. But if their followers don't engage with their posts, your brand may just go unnoticed. That's why it's essential, like you just said, to identify social influencers who have a good engagement rate. Let's talk about reach, Nikki. The influencer's reach shows you the number of unique people that you could potentially reach, right? And this is essentially the number of followers that the social media influencer has. The higher the number, the better it is for the brand. Where do you see that the bigger brands like Prada, Gucci, Armani, Versace, some of these high-end fashion luxury brands, are they reaching out to regular influencers, or are they still trying to use celebrities and VIPs in Hollywood?
I think they stay with the name brands, the household names, not so much. There are certain people that are influencers with a large number of following, but they're not known as a household name. So they don't go for people, I think, just based on the followers alone. It's more so a wide variety of, their reach, what they're working on, how much buzz they have, because there could be someone with 5-10 million followers and they won't touch them. It just depends on the name.
It depends on the name. Exactly.
Yeah.
What are some red flags one should be aware of when hiring influencers, or when brands are looking at the right fit?
Oh, I think that's kind of along the same lines. There could be someone with a lot of followers, but there are certain people that kind of fudge those numbers. So you have to make sure that they really have kind of earned their place in the influencer field, and they haven't just kind of bought their way into it. So you have to see who's commenting to them. Are there other people that are celebrities commenting to them? Making sure that they really have the reach that the numbers say.
Exactly, because we definitely know that fake followers, you can waste your time as a brand if you engage somebody that has fake followers, and your marketing budget is just going to go down the drain. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. We have about a minute and a half left, and I would love to know a little bit more about you. I know that you're very family oriented. You were the only girl from a family of 4 brothers, and you are the second youngest sibling in the family, so to speak. What was it like growing up with as the only girl, really?
Oh my goodness. I was very protected, especially with all Greek brothers. So they made sure that I was protected, and they always had an eye on me no matter what happened. So I
I
like
love
that.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on and chatting. It was so fun talking to you. It's been, listen, happy, Merry Christmas, everybody. Today is Christmas Day, and what a treat that we got to chat with Nikki on this platform. You are a superstar.
Thank you. You're beautiful. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. That is Nikki Giavassis. You guys have to check her out on social media. She's all over the place. She's definitely somebody that you want to look at if you are considering hiring an influencer of sorts. She's a business person, an entrepreneur, and she's all around just a great soul. Remember, Nikki Giavassis. Check her out on the gram. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. We'll be right back after this.
Moment of Zen is brought to you by Biche Cucina and their newest location in Soho. At Biche, you'll be dining in a relaxed and elegant atmosphere with friendly, attentive service that offers delicious dishes from Northern Italy and American cuisine. Biche caters to all dietary needs. A DJ entertains on Friday and Saturday evenings, and live upbeat jazz for Sunday brunch. Located at 15 Watt Street. Online at bichecucinasoho.com.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, I'm very excited about my next 2 guests. I have the honor of chatting again with my good friend, Kweku Mandela. Now, Kweku is Nelson Mandela's grandson, and he's coming on with his dear friend, Ethan Zohn, who's an incredible soul. Now, Ethan is a former professional soccer player and winner of CBS's Survivor Africa. This win springboarded an exceptional chapter in Ethan's life, one of entrepreneurship, social purpose, and advocacy. He took his money from the win and invested in something much bigger than himself, co-founding Grassroots Soccer. Now, Grassroots Soccer is a first-of-its-kind NGO that uses the sport of soccer to teach at-risk youth self-reliance and critical life skills such as HIV, AIDS awareness, and prevention. Since its inception, the international organization has scaled up to 52 countries worldwide, impacted and graduated more than 2.5 million lives, and worked with scores of public and private sector partners. He and Kweku are getting settled into the broadcast room, and they're going to be on in just a sec. Now, imagine your grandfather was an icon of democracy and social justice. Well, Nelson Mandela received more than 250 honors, including the Nobel Peace Prize. He's held in deep respect within South Africa, where he's often referred to by his Thembu clan name Madiba and described as the father of the nation. For those unfamiliar with his grandson, Kweku was born in South Africa and grew up in America. He attended APA International Film School in Sydney. His South African production company, Out of Africa Entertainment, is highly regarded and at the center of a ton of charitable and philanthropic efforts. Kweku is also the co-founder of Africa Rising Foundation. Now, the Mandelas have been inspiring figures and symbols of hope, grace, and change for the world, and Kweku Mandela has been pivotal in carrying on his granddad's legacy. Kweku has been part of the Global Citizens Festival since its inception back in 2012. They're dedicated to ending extreme poverty by the year 2030, a movement of engaged citizens working together to create change. They use their platform to encourage citizens, corporations, community leaders, and artists to learn about and act on global issues. Now, Kweku is always hard at work motivating the next generation to make a change. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. What an honor to have you both on.
Thank you for having us. And firstly, I want to congratulate you on remembering all of that and doing it in one take. So,
of course, Kweku, thanks for coming back on, and thanks for coming back with Ethan. Now, your granddad did a huge music series called 46664 for HIV and AIDS, and all throughout the 2000s, you saw the power of that. Live Aid, Live Earth, the Monterey Pop Festival at Woodstock. Your grandfather often said that music and sports have the power to unite people when politicians can't. Tell me how you're using your grandfather's legacy in combining film, music, and art to affect the positive changes that you are.
well, 46664 was, the brainchild of a number of people, and focused on how we could create, I think, a new stage of awareness where young people wanted to know what their status was when it came to HIV and AIDS. The next incarnation of that has been Global Citizen and its focus around extreme poverty. But I think we've seen that sports and often, music are universal kind of languages that cut across borders, cut across language barriers. They allow people to unite. They allow people to interact in ways they can't, in other kind of forms, whether that be education, or in the workplace. And so, I think for me and my personal passion has always been, how can I utilize the power, I think, convening power of sports and music to try and tackle some of the world's social ills, and hence why I'm very proud to be on the show with Ethan, because he really does inspire me with the work he does at Grassroots Soccer. He didn't have to do it ultimately.
Exactly.
It was a choice, and it's impacting hundreds of thousands of young people around the world and on the African continent, which I'm so passionate about.
Absolutely. Ethan, so nice to have you on. I'm really excited to chat with you. Now, you went from a fit and active 35-year-old former professional soccer player, and you became the unlikely face of cancer, diagnosed not once, but twice with CD20 and Hodgkin's lymphoma. You're a cancer-free since 2012 now, and a strong voice for survivors and fighters of all ages. What inspired Grassroots Soccer, and what did Grassroots Soccer mean to you as you were fighting this aggressive cancer?
Well, I think it's important to mention, what both Kweku is doing and what we're doing with Grassroots Soccer. We're using something incredibly global like music and sports to bring people together, then deliver these health interventions or awareness campaigns. So I think it's taking something really cool and pairing with something not as cool, just to kind of raise the global awareness of these important issues facing adolescents and youth around the world. For me specifically, I lived and played professional soccer in Zimbabwe before my time on the TV show Survivor. And while I was there, I witnessed firsthand what was happening with HIV and AIDS and how it was just destroying this community that I was now a part of. I had friends get sick, kicked off the team, ostracized from the community, and lived the end of their life in a really lonely, sad way. And so we really just wanted to, how can we use the world's most popular sport and the leaders and the heroes that this sport creates to deliver these important life messages? And for me, when I was going through cancer, like, I don't know what it's like to have HIV. I hope I never have to know that, but I do know what it's like to walk into a doctor's office, sit down, and get a life-threatening diagnosis with little to no cure. And so at that moment, I really identified with the kids that we were serving in Africa and around the world. So I think having cancer and dealing with grassroots soccer has enabled me to do my work in a little bit better of a way.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. Kweku, you're very driven and focused when it comes to philanthropy. You've always combined, like you said, film, music, and art and sports now to keep the family legacy alive. And you're a dad and you're setting your own examples now. What is the most important lesson we need to teach our youth?
That our time on earth is finite. And, you know, as quickly as, you know, we're here, we can leave this earth. And I think we all have, you know, the opportunity to actually leave an impact, which helps, you know, another human being. For me, you know, I'm not going to act like I'm a saint, because I'm not. I'm very flawed as a human being. But I do believe that the small actions that we take, whether that be one-on-one with individuals, whether that be as a group, you know, can have a very lasting impact on you know, someone's life. And that change can ultimately lead to us finding the next world leader, right? Who's going to reshape the world, right? Or the next artist or poet, right? Or, you know, football player like Pele, right? Who changes an entire country's view on someone and particularly their race. And I think, you know, those are important things. And so for me, I want to play my part in that. And I'm always talking to, you know, other people that I meet and trying to encourage them to at least think about it.
I love that about you. And you are always trying to get others, especially friends within your circle, to contribute to some form of philanthropy within the community. I know that that's how you got me involved with Orphan Myth. And I thank you for that, because it's so important to give back. Ethan, just this past November, Grassroots Soccer hosted a gala right here in New York City. It was a night of philanthropy and community, and you raised funds to ensure that adolescents in Africa aren't left isolated, left out, or left behind, raising over $1 million each year to directly support grassroots soccer's life-saving work with young people across the globe. Give me some insight of how funding gets to the youth. We have about a minute left.
Funding, we raise money here in the United States, but we distribute that money through all our programs outside the United States. And the way we're able to grow to scale, 60 countries, 13 million youth served, is we partner with other organizations doing incredible work on the ground in these countries, like a Kweku Mandela, and all the work that he's doing is something that we look forward to doing in the future as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it's extremely important to be able to continue this, because just like, you know, for every level of success that we have as a soul, as a human being, you have to find a way to balance it and give back. You know, the higher the rise, the greater the fall. So I always kind of like to keep it balanced out in life. And I think if you are successful, if you have the ability to affect change, if you have the ability to have a voice, to have your voice heard, then you, Kweku, people in our community that are powerful, such as yourselves, doing such amazing things to give back, is what gives me hope for humanity, because not everybody does this. So kudos to you. I take my hat off.
Thank you. Yeah, and there's only two things in life we can be absolutely certain about. One, we're all going to have to die. But two, we all have to live until we die. So how do you want to live? What is your legacy going to be?
Exactly. Kweku, thank you so much for coming on. We've run out of time, but I thank you for bringing on Ethan. This was a great little segment.
Thank you for having us, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely, guys. Check him out, Ethan Zohn. You can go to his website, easyOHN.com, or check him out on the gram at Ethan Zohn. And he's everywhere. Grassroots Soccer is everywhere too. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York. Definitely check out Kweku, because he's on the gram too, Kweku Mandela. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OG Pay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OG Pay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out ogpay.com.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I am your host, Zen Sams. Now, up next, we have My Healthy Minutes, brought to you by Aikido Pharma. And Aikido Pharma is an early-stage drug development company dedicated to developing new solutions for life-threatening diseases. They publicly trade on the NASDAQ under ticker symbol AIKI. Today, we are featuring female trailblazer, doctor, scientist, and author, Dr. Rachel Yehuda, chatting all things intergenerational trauma, mental health, and how our family past may be affecting our current state of mind. Now, parents pass down all kinds of traits to their children, from hair and eye color to freckles. And research shows they might also pass down the trauma of their own childhood. Early life experiences, such as neglect and abuse, can impact the structure and function of the brain. The effects of these experiences can appear in the trauma survivor's offspring. And a recent study found that moms who experienced emotional neglect as children went on to have infants with altered brain circuitry in areas responsible for fear responses and anxiety. But scientists are uncertain if these connections affect children's social or emotional development. For example, infants could be predisposed to anxiety, but it's also possible the connections could boost the resilience. In either case, studies on intergenerational trauma show that children's lives are shaped not only by their own experiences, but also by their parents' experiences years before they were born. Scientists first started exploring intergenerational trauma in the 1970s when psychiatrists observed behavioral problems such as low self-esteem, nightmares, anxiety, and guilt in children of Holocaust survivors. Children of Vietnam veterans report similar issues. Since that time, the idea that stressful or traumatizing experiences may change behaviors in future generations has become widely accepted. However, the mechanisms behind how trauma gets passed down are less understood. But here to break it all down for us is Dr. Yehuda. She's a very well-respected professor of psychiatry and neuroscience at the Icahn School of Medicine, vice chair for Veterans Affairs in the Psychiatry Department, Director of Mental Health at the VA, and Director of the Center of Psychedelic Psychotherapy and Trauma Research, which is a joint Mount Sinai and VA project. Welcome to the show, amazing lady.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. Now, the Yehuda Lab is a multidisciplinary research team with very strong foundations in clinical research, and your lab investigates a wide range of endocrine, molecular, and brain biomarkers for PTSD and resilience. And you have been at the forefront of investigations of epigenetic mechanisms associated with intergenerational trauma, specifically in populations such as offsprings of Holocaust survivors and babies born to moms exposed to the World Trade Center attacks on 9/11. This is all very serious stuff. Clearly, the apple does not fall far from the tree. Please help me understand what this means for our children.
Well, what it means for our children, if we have traumas, is that the traumatic experiences not only affect the way we behave and the way we experience life, but that some of the biologic and behavioral changes can filter down and affect our children's lives. When I was working with adult children of Holocaust survivors that were coming into therapy, what they would say is, my parents were exposed to the Holocaust and to Auschwitz, but I was exposed to my parents who were damaged by being in a concentration camp. So that the effects of a trauma in the parent can really become the child's new environment. What we've learned more recently is that parental trauma can really also affect children from a biologic perspective. It can change hormonal function, brain function, and also the way our genes function through epigenetic changes. but we don't necessarily know whether or not these changes are positive or negative or both.
Understood. This is fascinating stuff when you really start to look under the hood. And I remember once telling myself, I'm turning into my mother, or, I'm carrying her baggage. And now this kind of all makes sense. And even one step further, you've gone to better understand gene environment interactions associated with PTSD risk. The Yehuda lab has recently pioneered the use of stress simulated induced neurons using stem cell technology. Tell me about this, because this is quite fascinating stuff.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you about that. I just want to go back to this point you made about carrying your mother's traumas or carrying your mother's experiences. What you may also be carrying are your mother's coping mechanisms. So that's also very important too. I mean, when we survive trauma in order to have children and raise them, then we have to focus not only on the fact that something negative happened to us, but that we survived it. We may also have survived it at a cost. So lumped into all of the things that get transmitted are maybe some of the vulnerabilities, but also some of the coping mechanisms. Now, the stem cell thing is a little complicated to explain, but I will try to do that. With new technology, it is possible to take skin cells or blood cells from your body and convert them into pluripotent stem cells. These are the cells that you had early on in development before they differentiated into brain cells or skin cells or muscle or heart cells or anything like that. And through new technology, you can take these pluripotent stem cells and induce them to become neurons and literally have your own neurons in a dish.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. And these are really embryonic neurons because they had to be reversed back to before they differentiated. And then when you have a plate of neurons in a dish, then you can be able to ask some really interesting questions about what we call gene by environment interactions in PTSD. What does that mean? So we all understand that we have genes that we're born with, and we understand that the environment can also affect us and change us. But the question is, why do we differ in the way that we function or behave in response to trauma? And we know that we do. So some people who are exposed to trauma will develop PTSD, some won't. Some might develop depression or an addiction. Some people might say, hey, this adversity made me stronger, and may not really express mental health problems. Some will express them, but then quickly recover from them. So what explains the fact that we respond so differently to stress? And one of the things that might explain it is that we're born with different genetics, and the way that the environment or stress influences genes may depend on the genes that we're carrying. And so what this stem cell project allows us to do is really look at kind of the before. If that sounds complicated, I'll try to give
No,
you,
this is great stuff.
way.
This is great stuff. You're really at the forefront of all of this research. And, with PTSD is highly prevalent in our society, affecting 10 to 15% of trauma survivors. Among combat veterans, rates are even higher, with estimates ranging from 20 to 40%. And although treatments for PTSD exist, it really is an intractable condition. And many patients remain symptomatic even after completing several courses of therapy. I know for a fact that I have relatives that have PTSD from serving in the war. But your lab launched the Center for Psychedelic Psychotherapy and Trauma at Mount Sinai. And this is an incredible partnership between research and medical organizations and the VA. Walk me through the benefits and importance of this very much needed research.
Well, we developed the Center for Psychedelic Psychotherapy and Trauma as a way to be able to study the effect of psychedelic assisted psychotherapy in PTSD. We had been doing biologic studies. Some of them we've already talked about. And so we know that PTSD is a condition that really does affect the brain and it does affect the body. And on some level, one would imagine that you need a medical treatment for being able to reverse some of those symptoms. But on the other hand, the experience of trauma is very profound, and you also need the ability to be able to kind of understand what has happened and how you've changed from it. So the treatment of PTSD right now involves mostly doing psychotherapy on the one hand, and also getting a medication, usually an antidepressant on the other hand. For most people, they might have different providers doing the psychotherapy and giving them the medication. But a psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy approach is really a combination of both of those methods. In psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, the patient receives a psychedelic compound such as, for example, MDMA or ecstasy, in order to really open them up and allow them to be able to do psychotherapy in a better way. When trauma survivors generally embark on a regular course of psychotherapy, what's hard for them is that the memories of the trauma intrude on them. They can become very distressed, and then they don't really want to talk about it. When people give them antidepressants, that can help with some of the depressive symptoms, but sometimes that makes people very numbed out and very unconnected to the trauma, like it goes too far.
Too far.
Yes, with psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, it's the right, potentially, we're going to study it, the right balance between taking something that really does affect your brain, kind of calms down your fear centers on the one hand, makes you more compassionate and insightful, so that you can look at the trauma in a different way. And we believe in that way really change your brain circuits. All the things that we've learned are altered in PTSD.
Wow, we could keep going on and keep talking about this, but thank you so much for coming on. We know that PTSD can impact veterans, first responders, victims of domestic violence, and really anyone who's endured trauma, and as well as their families. So this is very much needed research. Thank you for the good that you do, Doctor. It's a pleasure to have spoken to you today.
Thank you very much.
You guys have to check her out. She's on Twitter. You can check her out at Rachel Yehuda, and she's on Twitter again at MS Psychedelics, on LinkedIn, on the gram at Rachel Yehuda, PhD, and of course their website, labs.icahn.mssm.edu. They're all over the gram. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back. That was My Healthy Minutes, sponsored by Keto Pharma.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Icahn Pharma, an early-stage pharmaceutical company developing innovative drugs for improving anti-cancer and antiviral therapies. Traded on the NASDAQ under ticker AIKI. They have first-in-class partnerships with leading medical universities like the University of Maryland and the University of Texas. To learn more, go to www.icahn.pharma.com.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, up next in our Business and Buzz segment, we have returning contributor Kyle Wool, president of wealth management at Revere Securities. And today we are chatting about 2022 trends, what to pay attention to in the market, and one hot ETF to look out for. As a new group of underserved customers enter the investment space, here we are. Women in the US are expected to control as much as 30 trillion in assets over the next 3 to 5 years, and millennials 20 trillion by 2030. The new decision makers will expect the industry to offer unique investments and structured finance tools and options that our grandparents simply did not have access to. Women and millennials tend to invest differently than the past generation of older men. Millennials are both more risk averse and more socially conscious when selecting investments. In addition, because we came of an age during the financial crisis, millennials have a negative perception of some of the more traditionally dominant financial services companies. But here to break it all down for us is Kyle Wool, along with Bobby Dudley, who
was on the original Sector SPDR team in 1998 when they brought Sector SPDR to market. He rejoined Sector SPDR in 2008 and is currently the Eastern Division Manager as well as the NYC Metro Sales Manager. They currently have approximately $250 billion in assets under management. He is definitely no stranger to the game. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kyle, so nice to have you back. Let's start with you. As many are grappling with the challenges of too much, right? We have too much demand for consumer goods, tangling supply chains and stocking inflation, too much money sloshing around in Silicon Valley and on Wall Street, making startups and stocks look overvalued. And on a far more sober note, too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, posing difficult choices about sustainability for CEOs, investors, and consumers alike. So no surprise then that you, Kyle, are on the hunt for companies that have the business models and the technology to adapt to this very fast-changing world. What investment vehicles are you looking at these days?
Well, everything's dependent on the individual investor and what their risk tolerance is. But I do think right now we're seeing a rotation in the global markets. You're seeing a lot of the high-flying technology stocks that have done tremendous throughout 2021 and even 2020 during the COVID crisis that never seems to quite go away. But you're seeing companies like Tesla, Amazon, and Apple that have done very well. I think people are taking some end-of-the-year profit taking, especially with the year-end for tax purposes. And you're seeing some rotation going into more traditional brick and mortar stores, more traditional industrial plays. Whether the Build Back Better comes back in a different form or not, it seems that not a lot happened with that over the weekend, but you're starting to see some money rotate out of tech into more industrial plays. And that's one thing I've seen on a macro level.
Yeah, absolutely. And companies, and these are very shifting times, and you have to look at these companies and really look under the hood. Bobby, competition among ETF issuers has resulted in the introduction of ETFs that are very specific in focus. So young investors can find specific ETFs that track particular markets or segments that may be particularly appealing to them. And as of 2020, there were at least 2,177 US-based exchange-traded funds, according to data from Fidelity. For young investors, this extensive range of available ETFs offers such a wide range of investment choices. Talk to us about SPDR's ETF in particular and what you guys are doing over there.
At Select Sector SPDRs, what we have is 11 sectors basically that are all part of or components of the S&P 500 itself. So as opposed to buying one ETF that represents the entire S&P 500, you can customize and weight each sector according, as Kyle had talked about earlier, about the risk tolerance of a particular client. In addition to that, there are certain things that you can do with sectors. For example, the current environment that we're in has raised the bar in terms of hybrid work environments. So you work partially from the office, partially from home. Technology can't be abandoned because technology is a big driver of software that has to be utilized in those type of environments. And on the flip side, there are other things where energy and sustainability has changed. In the energy sector, which is dominated by the oil companies have changed, where they're looking at carbon changes where they can actually recapture and also become much more sustainable. So there's a lot of different varieties out there. And again, technology has probably been one of the bigger stories in the last couple of years. And at the same time, a lot of analysts will look, or strategists will look at different scenarios based upon what the Federal Reserve is doing, and therefore look at sectors, for example, that would have a play against inflation and in other situations against rising interest rates or the potential for rising interest rates. So a lot of sectors, for example, that would be defensive, things like consumer staples, which are mostly food and beverage type of companies. And then you have things like healthcare, everything from large cap pharmaceutical companies to biotech companies. And then energy again, and probably real estate as probably one that is often looked upon as a inflation hedge. As real estate prices rise, it's not just what we see here in, let's say, for example, in New York City, but nationwide in different areas such as tower stocks, those companies that are involved in cell phone companies, all the way down to companies that are in the storage business. So it's very different world, but you can customize, and that's really the key.
And customization is definitely lucrative to the younger pool of investors, I think.
Correct.
We always like to customize things. It's kind of like living in this digital world where everything's on demand and you want it and you can have it and it's instant gratification. Same thing with catering to what we need in terms of our financial necessities. Kyle, we've been through this incredible rebound year, but now we're starting to see new headwinds, whether it's inflation, labor and supply chain problems, or the end of government stimulus. Is 2022 a year when you see equities, value of shares issued by a company, when we talk about equities in general, cooling off?
Well, obviously the market's been red hot for the last couple of years. So even with a little bit of a pullback that we've had over the last week or week and a half, people still have to understand the S&P 500 is up in excess of 20%, even with this pullback. So 20% is a red hot market. Do we expect 2022 to be at 20%? We never really expect the markets to be 20% or 30% in any given year like they have the last few years. But I would say money is still cheap. If the Fed does start to taper, it's going to take a while. And I don't really see the real interest rates rising, especially with this new omnivirus.
Yes, and 2022 is just a week away. Kyle, I have another question for you. Young investors who are not altogether familiar with the intricacies of the financial markets might be well served by investing in an exchange-traded fund that tracks the broader market versus sector funds that enable investors to take bullish or bearish positions in specific sectors. And characteristics of ETFs that make them ideal investment vehicles for young investors include diversification, liquidity, low fees, investment management choices, and innovation. Walk me through what you are looking for, a real pro's POV.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at what I do for my own investments or what I do for wealthy individuals, I think that 80% of, or 70 or 80%, depending on the person, should be in diversified portfolios, whether it's ETFs like Bob Dudley's talking about with the Select Sector SPDRs and large caps. But I also do think it's intelligent to take 10, 20, or even 30% of your portfolio and look for the next Tesla and look for the next Apple. I do think great wealth is created through concentration, but at the same time, a majority of your wealth should be preserved through diversification. And I do think the ETF, especially right now, whether it's RSPY, which is Revere Securities ETF, which is created out of the 11 sector SPDRs, I think that's a great way to protect your wealth. But I also do think it's important to start to look at some of these pre-IPOs like Impossible Foods or Reddit or Robinhood, where you can make a lot of money. So 2022, I think, will be a very tactical year. I do think you should be conservative with the bigger part of your portfolio. I do think you should look to rebalance, take some of your profits, but I do think money still will remain cheap and there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Got it. Got it. Good advice. Good advice. Noted, my friend. Well, listen, time is up. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. It's always a pleasure. Bobby, thank you so much for coming on. That was Kyle Wool, president of wealth management at Revere Securities, and his friend Bob Dudley from Sector SPDR. You guys could check them out on the internet at www.sectorspdrs.com. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
The options and recommendations expressed by Kyle Wool are his and his alone and may not represent Revere Securities as a whole. A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Revere Securities. Revere is committed to building a relationship of trust in which they work closely with you to help you define your objectives, explore alternatives, and choose the financial and investment strategies that are most appropriate for you. Go to reveresecurities.com.
Remember to join me right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York, every Saturday night from 9 to 10 p.m. We're at the end of our date, my dear friends. You can also go to 710WOR.iheart.com/A Moment of Zen. And remember, we're now on TV. Download the KP Media TV app on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, or Android TV, or tune in at watch.kpmedia.tv and catch A Moment of Zen on the Impact Live channel Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. All episodes are now available on demand. Thank you for listening to A Moment of Zen. It has been an absolute pleasure being your host. Hope you had a Merry Christmas. Wishing you all the best for the new year. And remember to tune back in next Saturday at 9 p.m. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. We could have never done this without you. It has been an incredible year. And remember, happiness is the only thing that multiplies when you share it.